This is Classic FM.
Sir Colin Davis was an internationally renowned conductor who at the time of his death in the middle of April had been recording for more than half a century. He may be dead, but his recorded legacy lives on, and I'd like to give you a few key recordings that I think any collector will want to establish just what a formidable interpreter Colin Davis was. Let's begin with his great love, Mozart. Colin Davis's big breakthrough was in 1959 when he replaced an ailing Otto Klemperer to do a concert performance at the Festival Hall of Don Giovanni. Davis was in his early 30s, but not particularly well known. But after that, he suddenly became in great international demand. So Don Giovanni, a recording that Colin Davis made in the mid-70s with an all-star cast at the time that Davis was music director at Covent Garden, that'd be top of my list. Mozart, Colin Davis absolutely adored. He is life itself, he said, and he conducted Mozart throughout his long career. So I would add in Così fan tutte, because that again is a beautiful recording of a jolly opera where Davis's relaxed style, to me, sounds so much more ingratiating than some of the original instrument bands that we have to listen to these days. And my own particular favourite, a recording that Colin Davis made in 1976 with a really strong cast, Janet Baker, singers of that distinction, some of the finest singers, Lucia Pop of the mid-70s, of La Clemenza di Tito, the opera seria with which Mozart, alongside the magic flute, took his farewell of opera, only performed a couple of months before he died. Often underrated, full of beautiful things, and Colin Davis's recording, for me, is the finest ever made. Now, of course, Colin Davis made his reputation also with the music of Hector Berlioz, fine French conductor, never really received his due in France, and Colin Davis in the 60s and 70s, by recording most of Berlioz's major music, really put Berlioz back on the map. In 1969, he recorded with the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden, Berlioz's sprawling operatic masterpiece, Les Troyens, and I think that should be in anyone's collection, even though it is a formidable listen. Rather more accessible then, of course, is Berlioz's Symphony Fantastique, which Davis recorded twice, once with the London Symphony Orchestra and then in 1974 with the Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra. That is the one I would go for. Davis also made another fine set of recordings with the Concertgebouw of all of Haydn's London symphonies, and that would certainly be on my little list of the great Colin Davis recordings nobody should be without. Let me move on now to another favourite opera recording that Davis made during his tenure from 1970 to 1985 at the Royal Opera House. A lovely, lovely recording of Tosca with Montserrat Caballé and the young José Carreras, because of course Carreras, in the middle of his career, suffered from leukemia, and although he was rather miraculously saved by the then new procedure of bone marrow transplantation, I don't think his voice was ever quite the same again, and you can understand why. Here on Davis's 1976 recording, he sounds wonderful, and Colin Davis really pours his heart into the beautiful orchestration of Tosca, like the beginning of Act 3, often overlooked, where it's dawn around the Castel Sant'Angelo and a shepherd boy drives his sheep outside and sings a song wonderfully evocative, one of Colin Davis's finest recordings, one of the finest recordings ever made of Tosca. Let me turn finally, for my last three choices, to the glorious Indian summer that Davis had at the helm of the London Symphony Orchestra. Of course, Davis had first conducted the London Symphony Orchestra in 1959, but it was in 1995 that he became the music director, serving for 11 years, and then afterwards became a very active president of the orchestra, continuing to conduct the orchestra regularly, and thankfully, most of his key concerts have been issued on LSO Live. He did an Elgar series. Davis was not primarily, although British, a conductor of British music. He was best known until this set of Elgar symphonies came out for his performances of the music of Michael Tippett. But he decided to return to Elgar in the mid-1990s, and his recordings of the symphonies are, for me, exceptional and well worth getting on a 2 CD set, where you get not only the first 2 symphonies, but also the third one that was sort of recooked up from sketches that Elgar left at his death. And then, of course, Colin Davis was a renowned conductor of Sibelius. He recorded all of the Sibelius symphonies 3 times, once in the 70s with the Boston Symphony Orchestra, then in the 90s with the London Symphony Orchestra for RCA, and then again 5, 6, 7 years ago with the London Symphony Orchestra. And that is the set I would strongly recommend. My final choice is a curiosity. Colin Davis, in his 80s, you just think, well, all the music he ever need to know, he already knew. But no, he decided to go out and master the symphonies of that other great Scandinavian symphonist, the Dane, Carl Nielsen. And he performed all 6 Nielsen symphonies with the London Symphony Orchestra and had recorded them all on LSO Live. So far, these recordings, I mean, the one I'm talking about now, comes only from 2011. We're talking 2 years ago. They haven't yet been boxed up. They will do. But the one I'm going to suggest to you is of the Symphonies 2 and 3. Nielsen, a lyrical composer, not as well known as he ought to be. Colin Davis, even at the great age he was then, still able to bring out the majesty of that music. That's my top 10. Colin Davis, gone, but never, never forgotten.